So, the ACC, Clemson, and Florida State. Everything's good, right, Paul?
That's all. It's like nothing ever happened.
So here we are. Pete Thamel, Andrea Adelson, also a couple of other notes. The ACC Board of Directors voted to agree changes in the financial distribution, the model buyout clarity for the league that marks a key step in the lawsuits brought on by Clemson and FSU now being dropped. This is the first of 3 expected steps today. Also, the ACC had their announcement too, but here's Andrea Adelson with what she reported. The ACC, FSU, and also Clemson are expected to drop by $18 million their exit fees each year through 2029, 2030, and after that, exit fees drop to $75 million, and exiting teams. This is the key here, the grant of rights key. The exit fees can be money. It's going to be money, but the grant of rights, the media rights that teams have for their broadcast moving forward, even if they leave the ACC, if they pay the various exit fee, they now will continue to own their own media rights.
So they convinced the ACC of that particular point, in that if we are not in the league, you don't own our rights. We have the grant of rights as long as we're in the league. So if we leave, we take the rights with us. And so they won on that in this. And everybody gets what they want for now. The ACC, this is a temporary situation, and they have to work to try to make it better to keep together 5-6 years from now when that exit fee drops to $75 million, which is about par for the course of the other exit fees of everybody else, that's moved conferences. That about stays with that. So, Florida State and Clemson can figure out what their plans are for the future and set up different things, and the ACC can stay intact, and that's what's best for everybody right now. But in 2030, all bets are off.
So does this mean Florida State will stop whining like little bitches now?
I hope so.
I hope so, too. But, yeah, I think I guess part of this would be the whole dropping of price to, $75 million after 2030, right? Mm-hmm. So, in theory, could they leave in 2 years and pay $150 million or whatever it would be?
Whatever that number would be,
You could, so I guess that'll be a dream for some. But, yeah, there's definitely a lot of people I saw disappointed yesterday. There was a lot of details that weren't out, and we knew that those would come, and so it's good to have those today to be able to parse through and understand fully what's actually going on here. But, yeah, it's from all indications, now that we have more details, a great day for Florida State and Clemson and potentially Miami and North Carolina as well. The fact that you've got a date that's in the foreseeable future that's an unofficial exit date of sorts now, 5 years, and you can pretty much do what you want to do, I think is definitely going to make that time fly by a little better. And there were people, I saw plenty of them disappointed yesterday, that felt like they had been led to believe that this was like imminent and that they were leaving. And it was just a matter of like, well, just settle and then we're in the Big Ten. And it wasn't that simple, but it's a lot simpler now today with all the information that's been filled in. So there is a path. It's just a path that's probably going to take you about 5 years to get to. And it's not a path for everybody. It's a path for probably a handful of schools in terms of going to a couple of the leagues there in the Big Ten and the SEC. And as far as the rest of them, I mean, we'll have those conversations. The Big 12 will obviously, be involved to some extent. But, yeah, this seems like a banner day for the schools that wanted more, that felt that they were owed more. I think there's a slippery slope when you're talking about TV ratings, and those are already pretty much built in. Mm-hmm. I mean, sure, you're going to have an example like SMU, whose TV ratings the past couple years are going to be well more than they ever were before, part of because of who they played and part of because of the games they played in. But for a deck that's already stacked, it is now stacked more when you've got, like, the teams that automatically have the best TV ratings already pretty much are going to benefit anyways. And so,
and adding Notre Dame into the
and
mix.
Then you add Notre Dame, and the fact that you get to schedule Notre Dame if you're those big schools more often because they want to play Clemson more and they want to play Florida State more and they want to play Miami more. It feels like all of the, kind of like in this country, the rich are just patting each other on the back and feeding off of each other to great riches. And so, yeah, those schools that are already the biggest with the biggest TV ratings are going to benefit, and you win even more so. So that sets up perfectly for the schools that were barking. And so, yeah, it's a great day for them. I think for the ACC, I've seen a lot of the fans of other schools kind of coming to grips with it. I think if you're a fan of the ACC who's not a fan of one of those schools, you do have 5 years. I mean, I think you basically have a countdown clock. And look, I'll say this. I saw, like, immediately as soon as this came out, all right, so Georgia Tech's doing this, and then Florida State's going here. And I know that's the fun of this whole thing, but I don't know what 5 years from now looks like, guys.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, in college sports. So whatever's happening today, I don't know that it's going to be exactly that 5 years from now or even 4 years from now. But, you know, that's a time period you can now circle rather than 2036 and say, all right, there's the end of the road potentially, not only for those schools that have made their once known and have now gotten those once in return, but for everybody, it's kind of a ticking clock now of like, all right, let's see what these next 5 years hold. And then after that, the ACC might not even exist anymore. They might be a version of the Pac where it's like, Boston College and Pitt, and then it's 10 other schools that have been called up, so to speak. We don't know. That's stuff we'll figure out over time, but definitely feel like with more details, ACC kind of sort of got a win in a way. They didn't lose necessarily, but definitely feels like FSU, Clemson were the huge winners here.
Well, they have some time,
Yeah.
and of course we'll see. Here's one of the keys to 29 and 2030. The major shift, the next major shift in the college athletics industry will come during 2030 and 2032, at least expected. The litany of events could trigger sweeping changes in the college sports landscape as if we haven't seen that in the last few years. During those years, the Big 12 and the Big 10 TV contracts will end. The NCAA men's basketball tournament and college football playoff television deals will also end if they're not extended prior to that. The sport will also be 5 years into the athlete revenue sharing, the concept that they're still trying to figure that out in college sports. And many expect to be more formally divided, the richer schools from all the rest, a long-discussed splintering among college football subdivisions of 134 schools that right now is the FBS. So that is why the key, that date, that calendar of 29 and 30 also is the start of when you could have some massive changes or even more, consolidation in some particular way.
I remember vividly our guy Bob Thompson saying that word in particular multiple times and us not really understanding what exactly that meant. And now we see exactly what it meant. It's all the biggest schools ganging up together is basically what the consolidation is.
Which they're doing in a way now, but then that allows an open door of a lot of things to then be approved.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was kind of the gist of what he was getting at. And sometimes I feel like he was afraid to outright say that because of the audience he was talking to. Mm-hmm. I feel like he felt like he was talking to Big 12 fans, so even though we have more than just Big 12 fans, but I sometimes felt like it was not a matter of being as brutally honest in what consolidation meant because of the fact that would devastate like most of the people that were listening at that time. But that's kind of the gist I always felt like what that meant was consolidation means that's paring down. So we're not quite there, but you can see the writing on the wall of how we'd get there pretty easily. I mean, the ACC, for example, now has 5 years to see what happens and figure out how all this works and whether it's a disaster or whether it's great. I don't know. We'll see on that. And then, you know, perhaps that is the exit door, and then the ACC is a different beast. Like, that's all to be found out over the next 5 years. But, yeah, I definitely feel like we're firmly in consolidation. And it also ties into what we're talking about with the schools paying players now. And I don't remember what report it was yesterday, but the talk about how there's going to be some schools that just say a couple of years into this thing of like, we can't do this anymore. Like, this isn't sustainable. We can't keep fundraising like this. We can't afford to keep doing this. On second thought, we're out. And that in itself will also lead to more consolidation. So I just remember that word from Bob Thompson always hanging in the air a little bit and kind of understanding but not quite fully understanding what he was getting at. And I think we see it clear as day on a day like today where it's not consolidation yet, but it's setting the stage for there to be more of it for sure.
All right, Drew Weatherford. Paul, who is he?
He's a former very mediocre at best
FSU Board of Trustee, right? But he has, is he the one that has private equity or something like that?
Yeah, he's with Redbird Capital. So he's doing well.
Yeah, we made it clear, Florida State, that we were willing to seek a new home if something drastically didn't change. But the good news is that things have drastically changed for our benefit. I think it's a really good outcome, great outcome for everybody involved. What they wanted to change was, and they're already getting a little bit of this anyway, is that those who bring in the bigger eyeballs and have the most success will get more of a piece of the pie, which is the ACC television contract with ESPN. There's also the ACC network. Now, last year for Florida State, that didn't work out as well because they sucked. They weren't very good, and they've been good, and they have been, of course, part of carrying the conference, like Clemson, Miami, possibly others. But there were some other football schools that started playing well last year. But they kind of got what they wanted. It's very simple, very not selfish, if you could call it that year. But the good news is that things have drastically changed for our benefit, which means you don't have the lawsuit anymore. And now you move forward. You're going to see a lot of these, oh, my God, Wake Forest is going to join the Big 12. Just take a deep breath. Could that at some point, who knows who might raid one another, but that's so far down the line. But this is like meth for some who want constant realignment change in college football.
Again, they're fine right now. I mean, there's nothing to do right now. What I think will be the thing is for 5 years, what's the plan and to see how it goes. The way the ACC keeps, honestly, it's weird to say this, but the way the ACC can keep together and keep their big brand schools is that if other schools are actually good. And who knows if that can even happen. But Clemson is going to be the head and shoulders above everybody team going into the year. This year, SMU is still going to be back because they've got a lot of guys. But can Miami do it again? Is Carson Beck going to help them? Can a team like Pitt take another step forward? Can Syracuse keep doing it? That's what's going to be important for them to increase their value. Otherwise, I mean, they've just given everybody who wants out in 5 years what the formula is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody wins in that there's not a lawsuit anymore to have to worry about. Nobody's having to pay into that was paying into that, which wasn't everybody. But, I mean, I'm sure, Clemson and Florida State's lawyers are glad to stand – or the ones paying the lawyers are glad to stand down and put their pocketbooks away for a little while. And so there is that where I do feel like everybody wins. But, yeah, make no mistake about it. I mean, there's plenty of people that will rush to tell you that revenue sharing and doing it lopsided – is not an exact science, and in fact, it can be one that creates cracks that are irreparable in your conference potentially. And that's the thought process, I think, for some, is that this is just the inevitable beginning of the end because this won't work. Or even if it does work, in 5 years, those teams all leave, and then you're left with what? You're left with a bunch of teams who hopefully competed. Hopefully, on the one side you see, well, this should spur people to invest more because now you get paid more for winning. You would think they were already doing that to some extent, but I guess, the feeling is some were just kind of cashing checks or at least not putting up as much on a yearly basis as the Seminoles or the Hurricanes or whoever were. So you do hope it makes for a more competitive league and more investment over the next 5 years. But, it'll be very interesting to see how everybody reacts to this. I mean, does Wake Forest suddenly get like more people on board like, man, we really got to go all in now? Or do you go, well, we're screwed. Like, what are we pouring money into? Like, we're never going to get huge TV ratings, so we don't benefit from that. We're never going to win the conference, so we don't benefit. Like, I don't know. It's going to be very, very interesting, like I said, to kind of just see how all this sort of matriculates around and works for these first couple of years at least, and how those shares are doled out and who benefits from them and who doesn't. Like, there's a lot of questions still. But we did get big ones answered today just in terms of, the decision itself to settle and what that all looks like. And again, it looks like a big giant W for Florida State and Clemson, and potentially that would also mean North Carolina and Miami. And for the rest of the schools, I think it's a big question mark, although you do have 5 years. On paper, you got 5 years of stability, which you didn't really know what you had before. You probably hoped it was like more like 11 years of stability because it was all the way to 2036. But I think there was always the feeling floating around there this would be settled at some point or another, and not quite last until then. So, the clock's ticking, I guess, in a way, but at the same time, you don't have to rush into any decision-making because it's still 5 years. And that doesn't sound like a long time, and I know for people who live long enough, years just peel off the calendar like it's just waking up on a daily basis. But that's still 5 years. And if we look back at just 5 years prior to today, and we said, hey, guess what happens in the next 5 years? We would have lost our minds and be like, that is not all happening in the next 5 years. So what happens in these next 5 years with the House settlement and all of those? Like, who knows where we are? But we do have a much clearer potential end date for the ACC as we know it.
John Wilner, who covered forever the Pac-12 and schools out on the western side of America, Cal and Stanford don't reach full share revenue status in the ACC until 2 years after the exit penalties drop below $100 million. Figured that was worth mentioning.
Yeah, that's not great, Bob. It's not ideal. So
let me ask you guys this. This is a question that, again, sometimes when my brain thinks, what's to keep any of those teams from saying, screw it, we'll do $175 million right now? That's nothing compared. There's nowhere to go.
That's it.
There's nowhere to go.
That's like nobody's,
that's
like, look, if Florida State called up the SEC right now and said, hey, it's going to be $175 million, what do you guys think? They'd be like, let's wait.
I mean, I think I would get doing that, but that's a lot of money, man.
Yeah.
Even for like Florida State or whoever, that's a lot of damn money. $175 million. Like, wouldn't you, especially if you just got what you wanted and you stand to benefit the most from it? I mean, wouldn't you rather spend the money you have and not burn it? I mean, because then all of a sudden you're in a $175 million hole just like that you now are paying.
Yeah, and you're going to get maybe, we're looking at hypothetical here, which is it's not always a great thing, but you're going to get an extra $25 million a year. You may not even get a full share. It will take you a long time to make up the difference, even if you're a part of a larger conference, at least for the next 5 years.
I mean, I get people want to turn around and be in the SEC tomorrow, but there is something to be said for patience, and I think you're much better off in saving $175 million or whatever the actual price would be, and just taking advantage of the system that you proposed and you fought for and you sued over and you got now. So now that you got it, you want to turn around and be like, let's pay $175 million to get out of here. I think that'd be stupid.
Yeah, thank you for the settlement. We're leaving.
And also, here's the thing. Use these 5 years to make sure that extra money you're getting makes you good.
Well, that's the thing.
And be so that when you get to the 5 years, you don't have to just be like, hey, you remember 1999? Like, you don't have to do that. You can say, like, hey, people watch us on TV every week. We're winning games. We're a benefit to whatever conference we're going to be in. Line up and tell us which one you want us to go to.
Yeah, I'd say you build a war chest. You don't empty it.
Exactly.
When you just got what you wanted. So, you've got 5 years in theory, and you make as much money and win as many games as you possibly can. If you do the latter, then there will be more of the former, and then you build that up. And then when the time comes and whoever's ready to ring your telephone and say, come on down, Johnny, then you do it then. But, I don't know why you'd rush to pay tens of millions of dollars to get out like a year too early when you can make whatever, I haven't tabulated all of the, if they make the playoff and if they do this and if they do that, but I know it's a lot of money they can make. So, you just fought. This is what you fought for. So you got it. So I think it would be bizarre to turn around and go, all right, we got what we wanted. Now let's leave that and go pay $175 million to get out of this situation that we fought for. I think you take full advantage of getting what you wanted. You go on a 5-year spree of winning as much as possible and grabbing every penny that you can, and you see how college sports works with whatever, is House going to be in play or is it not? But with that and with just all the other things kind of swarming right now, you let that figure itself out, and then, you're fully ready to just walk out the door whenever the time actually comes. And no sweat off your back, as opposed to right now where I think if you're the SEC and you're the Big Ten, like, you're probably also loving the fact that you got 5 years to get ready for potentially onboarding some more schools.
Yeah, let the dirt settle, or let the foundation settle of what will start here soon, the House agreement, and know a little bit more, a couple of more years, 5 years more of what NIL is. And, of course, there was a congressional hearing on that, I think congressional hearing today.